The broadcast was still playing when Ambassador Halvan Voss walked into the Chamber of Unified Voices and shot the projection screen with his sidearm. Nobody stopped him. Nobody even flinched. The delegates of 41 worlds sat frozen in their seats, watching sparks rain down from the ruined display. Because the image burned into their minds hadn't been on the screen anymore. It was already inside them. 6 hours earlier, the entire galaxy had watched Earth's ambassador, a quiet woman named Dr. Naomi Achebe, kneel on a stage in front of 3 billion viewers while the Threll Dominion's Grand Speaker laughed at her. "This," the Grand Speaker had said, gesturing at her like she was a stray animal that had wandered on stage, "is the species that begged to join the Unified Voices. Look at it. It cannot even fly. It cannot even speak properly across star systems, and yet it demands a seat at our table." The audience of alien dignitaries had laughed, not politely, openly, cruelly. Somewhere in the crowd, a Threll noble had thrown a data chip at her feet, like a coin tossed to a beggar. Naomi hadn't moved. She hadn't cried. She had simply looked directly into the camera, into every home, every command bridge, every royal court in the Unified Voices, and said 7 words. "You'll want to remember this moment." Then she'd stood, straightened her jacket, and walked off the stage. By morning, every treaty humanity had signed with the Unified Voices was ash, and nobody, not one species among the 41 that made up galactic civilization, understood why humans weren't panicking. They should have been terrified. Instead, they went quiet. And in the history of every species that had ever underestimated a quiet human, quiet was always the last thing they heard before everything changed. Asterisk. 3 days earlier, Earth had spent 11 years trying to join the Unified Voices, the loose alliance of species that governed trade, travel, and territory across the settled galaxy. 11 years of hearings, inspections, and humiliations dressed up as diplomacy. The Unified Voices didn't hate humanity. That would have required taking humans seriously enough to hate. Mostly, the other species found Earth amusing. A species that had only left its solar system 40 years ago, still fighting over borders that had existed for less than a few centuries, still burning fuel instead of harvesting starlight. To races like the Threll, golden-skinned, silver-eyed, 3 meters tall, with a written history stretching back 11,000 years. Humanity looked like a child who had wandered into a boardroom. Dr. Naomi Achebe had been sent to change that. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't a scientist, not primarily. She was a negotiator who had spent 20 years untangling ceasefires on a planet that specialized in producing them, Earth. She'd walked out of rooms with warlords who wanted to kill her. She'd sat across from men who had ordered massacres and gotten them to sign peace accords instead. The UN hadn't sent her to the stars because she was the strongest human alive. They'd sent her because she was the calmest. "You understand what happens if this goes badly," said General Marcus Webb, watching her prep for the summit from the observation deck of the transport ship, Meridian. Outside the viewport, the golden ring world of Threll Prime turned slowly, vast beyond comprehension. A civilization built across a structure 11 times the size of Earth. "I understand," Naomi said, not looking up from her notes. "The Threll have never lost a vote in the Unified Voices in 600 years. If they decide to humiliate us on that stage instead of admit us, every other species will fall in line behind them. We'll be locked out, maybe forever." "I know. So what's the plan?" Naomi finally looked up. There was something in her expression Webb had seen only once before. The night she'd negotiated the release of 19 hostages by staying silent for 4 straight hours while a warlord screamed at her, until he ran out of things to say and started listening instead. "The plan," she said quietly, "is to let them underestimate us. That's not a risk, General. That's the strategy." Webb didn't understand. Nobody did. Not yet. The summit hall on Threll Prime was built to intimidate. Ceilings 400 meters high, carved with the conquest histories of a dozen absorbed worlds. Chandeliers that were actually captured stars held in stasis fields, glowing like impossible jewels. 41 delegations sat in a descending spiral around a central stage, and at the bottom of that spiral, smaller than everyone, stood the human delegation. 4 people, no honor guard, no decoration. The Grand Speaker of the Threll Dominion, Calveth Oren, rose from the highest tier. He did not walk down to the stage. He didn't need to. His voice, amplified through the Dominion's translation network, filled the chamber like a physical weight. Species of the unified voices. We gather today to consider the application of a new member. I confess I find the request difficult to take seriously. Laughter. Some of it kind, most of it not. The Vex delegation, insectoid, methodical, rarely amused by anything, actually chittered in what passed for their laughter. Humanity has existed as a star-faring civilization for less than half a century, Calveth continued. In that time, it has fought 3 civil wars on its own planet, developed weapons capable of ending its own species twice over, and only stopped doing so, as far as we can tell, because it ran out of reasons to. And now it asks to sit among civilizations that have kept peace for millennia. He gestured toward the stage, toward Naomi, standing perfectly still in her plain gray suit, while a species 11 feet tall loomed above her on every screen in the chamber. Ambassador Achebe, please, enlighten us. What does humanity offer the unified voices that we do not already possess in abundance? This was the moment every human watching back on Earth had been dreading. Naomi didn't reach for a prepared speech. She didn't reference Earth's scientific achievements, or its art, or its resilience. She simply said, compassion under pressure, and the willingness to keep a promise even when it costs us. Calveth smiled, and it wasn't kind. How poetic, and how convenient, an answer that requires no proof. He turned to the chamber, spreading his arms, and delivered the line that would be replayed across 100 worlds within the hour. This is the species that begged to join the unified voices. Look at it. It cannot even fly. It cannot even speak properly across star systems, and yet it demands a seat at our table. The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. Somewhere in the crowd, a young Threll noble named Sarah Voth, Calveth's own niece, threw a data chip toward the stage. It landed near Naomi's feet, glittering, an insult disguised as a gift, meant to represent the education humanity so clearly needed. Naomi looked down at it. Then she looked up, directly into the primary broadcast camera, the one relaying this moment to 3 billion viewers across 41 worlds, including 7 billion more back on Earth. You'll want to remember this moment, she said. Then she turned, walked off the stage, and did not look back. The chamber erupted into confused muttering. It wasn't the exit of a defeated woman. It was the exit of someone who had already won something the room hadn't noticed yet. Nobody understood what she meant. Not for 6 hours. That was how long it took the Unified Voices trade network. The vast, ancient economic web connecting all 41 member species. To notice that every human shipping contract, every human-operated relay station, every human trade agreement had quietly, simultaneously, and legally expired. Humanity had never been fully inside the Unified Voices. It had been an associate member, bound by provisional trade treaties while its full application was considered. Those provisional treaties had a clause, buried in legal language, nobody had bothered to read closely because nobody believed humans capable of using it, allowing either party to withdraw with proper notice, effective. At the conclusion of any summit where the applying species was formally addressed by the Unified Voices Council, Calveth Oren had just addressed them. On camera, in front of 3 billion witnesses, he had triggered the clause himself. By the time the Threll Dominion's trade ministers realized what had happened, 11% of galactic shipping routes had gone dark. Not destroyed, not sabotaged. Simply unmanned, because it turned out that in the 11 years since first contact, humanity had quietly become the operators, mechanics, and navigators of nearly a third of the Unified Voices aging relay network, the unglamorous, unwanted jobs no one else wanted to do. Humans hadn't been sitting at the bottom of galactic society because they were weak. They'd been holding it up. Ambassador Halvan Voss, watching the trade collapse unfold from the Chamber of Unified Voices, understood the truth before anyone dared say it aloud. Humanity hadn't lost that summit. They'd been given exactly the insult they needed. She wanted this, he said, lowering his weapon at last, staring at the ruined projection screen. She wanted Calveth to humiliate her on camera. She needed the clause triggered publicly, or it wouldn't have been legally binding. Sarah Voth, the young noble who had thrown the data chip, sat frozen in her seat, the chip still glittering somewhere on that empty stage. She let my uncle destroy himself, in front of everyone, and he doesn't even know it yet. He will, Halvan murmured. Within the hour, every relay station humans operate goes dark for maintenance. Every shipping lane they navigate closes for safety inspection. Not attacked, not stolen, just withdrawn, politely, legally, exactly as the treaty allows. That's not a war, Sarah whispered. No, Halvan said. It's worse. A war we could survive. This is humiliation with paperwork. 3 days later, Naomi Achebe stood again in the Chamber of Unified Voices. But this time, the chamber had come to her 41 delegations. Summoned not by Threll authority, but by an emergency vote of the Unified Voices' remaining functional members, desperate to understand how to stop the collapse of a galactic economy that had quietly depended on humanity for longer than anyone had admitted. Calveth Oren was not present. He had resigned as Grand Speaker that morning, his 6 centuries of political standing erased by a single broadcast, and a woman who had never raised her voice. Sarah Voth stood in his place instead. Young, uncertain, but present. She had asked for the seat. Nobody had expected that. Ambassador Achebe, Sarah said, her voice smaller than her uncle's had been, but steadier than anyone anticipated. On behalf of the Threll Dominion, I withdraw my uncle's remarks, fully, publicly, and I ask, not demand, what terms would bring your people back to the network? Naomi studied her for a long moment, not with triumph, with something closer to relief. We were never trying to punish you, she said. We were trying to be seen. For 11 years, we did the work nobody wanted and asked for nothing but respect in return. When that wasn't given, we simply stopped pretending we needed to beg for it. And now? Now we negotiate as equals. Or we don't negotiate at all. Sarah nodded slowly. Somewhere behind her, on the chamber's massive display, a new broadcast had already begun circulating, not manufactured by any government, but shared organically across 41 worlds by ordinary citizens who had watched a small, unarmed species get laughed at, and then watched that same species dismantle an empire's arrogance without firing a single shot. The caption accompanying it, translated into every language in the Unified Voices, read simply, they didn't need to be the strongest. They only needed to stop being ignored. 3 billion viewers had watched Earth's humiliation. By morning, they understood it had never been humanity's humiliation at all. It had been a warning nobody had known how to read, until it was already too late to stop.